Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the May Forum for the Oregon City Business Alliance. As we shared last month, when we thought tolling was going to be going in fairly soon, we wanted to make sure as many people could attend this presentation so we could figure out a lot of the answers to questions that still remain. The good news, we do have good news and we have bad news. The good news is the governor decided to put a pause on tolling. I thought it was for 2 years. Commissioner Savas corrected me just now and said it's for 14 months. So we don't really have 2 years, but we do have more time. And that's what's most important, so that all the municipalities and communities that will be impacted by potential diversion or other consequences will have an opportunity to meet with the ODOT officials, meet with everybody else with the Urban Mobility Office, which is in charge of implementing the tolling on I-205 and elsewhere. So the good news is it has a pause. The bad news is it's probably still coming. So it's important that we find out as much as we can and get that information out to the citizens of our community. So if they need to apply for waivers or some other type of reductions, they know how to do that. So today, well, first of all, I'd like to thank our elected officials that are here today. Of course, one of our speakers, County Commissioner Paul Savas, and City Commissioner Mike Mitchell. And I do believe we have two other county commissioners that'll be coming, Ben West and Mark Shaw. So they should be arriving soon. And I'd like to thank Clackamas County for being a sponsor for today's forum. We really appreciate their contribution. As Oregon City being the county seat for the county, we feel it's important that we continue to have a very engaging, very reciprocal, and very positive relationship with our county commissioners and county officials. So today, our two speakers, as I said, we have County Commissioner Paul Savas, who will be providing a PowerPoint presentation, and Della Mosier from the Urban Mobility Office for ODOT, again, who has been tasked with determining the best implementation strategies for all kinds of different traffic improvements, but we're here to talk today about tolling. So that being said, Della, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, and I just want to say, again, my name is Della Mosier. I'm the Deputy Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today to provide an update on the Oregon toll program. I've been requested to specifically provide an update on the I-205 toll environmental assessment that was just released in late winter, early spring of this year. But before I do, I just want to take a step back here for a minute and really just acknowledge what I think we all can understand has been a very difficult conversation around the toll program, and specifically the toll program as it relates to the 205 corridor. And we here at ODOT have heard, very clearly that we need to show up in a different way, different than we have in the past few months and certainly the past few years. And so we're looking forward to today to be that opportunity to be able to hear your input and feedback and engage in a collaborative dialogue on how to develop the best toll program we can for this community and for Oregonians. So we are, again, really looking forward to the conversation today and really appreciate the opportunity to be here, so thank you. Next slide, please. So before we dive into the toll program, just want to provide a little context so we're all kind of operating from the same base of knowledge. So you all, I'm sure, are very familiar with the 205 corridor, and you know that in this particular section here in Oregon City, the interstate goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes for about 7 miles and creates a bottleneck. That bottleneck has been attributed to a majority of the crashes that we see on this section of the corridor. We also know that if there is a Cascadia level earthquake event, we don't have the infrastructure that would allow emergency providers to get into the region to provide support and help, nor be able to provide services and supplies. And of course, folks who are looking to exit the region, in the case of that level of an event, wouldn't be able to either. So we don't have that seismically resilient corridor that the region really needs to be prepared. And then finally, in the day-to-day experience of using I-205, and I've certainly been subject to it, and I'm sure most of you have, is we are experiencing around 7 hours of congestion every day on the corridor. So, of course, that means, for all of us, time impacts in our travel experiences, but it also means that emergency providers who are trying to get to people who need help or take people who need help to hospitals and other services are adversely impacted by the congestion on the 205 corridor. Next slide, please. We also know that we're having trouble keeping up with being able to pay for and take care of the maintenance of our systems, as well as make those transportation improvements to our system. And that's because the federal gas tax has been declining as it's not able to keep up with inflation over the past few decades. We also know that people are making the shift to more fuel-efficient vehicles and electric vehicles, which, although is really good for our ability to reach our state's climate goals and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it also means that the revenue that we get from the gas tax is decreasing. And then on top of that, just in the last couple of years, we have seen the costs to build those bridges and roads increasing by more than 20%. So we have less revenue, and then that revenue that we do have doesn't have as much buying power as it did just a few years ago to be able to make those transportation system investments. And when we think about the needs in the Portland metro region that are estimated to be around $7.5 billion, it's clear that we really need to look at different ways to generate revenue to be able to fund those investments and needs. And one of the ways that we find is possible is through congestion pricing, which is able to both provide revenue to be able to make those improvements, and improvements like on the 205 corridor, as well as to manage that congestion with a small amount of mode shift that would improve travel times, especially on a corridor here like on I-205. So next slide. Oh, I was off. Okay, let me go back one. Yeah, sorry. That was the gas slide. I should look back more often. So here, this slide's just really talking about how we're stuck on when we're stuck on the interstate system, just like those emergency providers for, those 7 hours. We're also, our cars are idling. We're contributing to those greenhouse gas emissions. And we know that the transportation sector provides a significant part of air pollution in our state. And so the more that we can do to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, we also benefit from increased faster travel times. And right now on the 205 corridor, as I mentioned, it's about 7 hours a day of congestion we're experiencing. And if we do nothing, we're looking at around double that, or 14 hours a day of congestion over the next 20 years. So that is another one of the issues that we're experiencing every day. So we can go to the next slide, and we've talked about the money, so I will just keep on moving. And next to the next slide, which is the map. So this map here shows ODOT's urban mobility strategy. Named projects. And in the orange are the projects that were named in state legislation through House Bills 2017 in the 2017 session, and House Bill 3055 in the 21 session. And so up at the top in the orange, you can see the I-5 Rose Quarter project, and to the left or the west, you'll see the Oregon 217 project, which is, if anyone's used that corridor lately, you can see it's gainfully under construction, entering its second year. And then down to the south, there is the I-5 Boone Bridge and Seismic Improvement Project. And then to the lower right is the I-205 improvements project. You also see on the slide the blue corridors on I-5 and I-205, and those blue lines denote the Regional Mobility Pricing Project or the Regional Tolling Program corridor limits. And then in the lower right, back to the I-205 improvements project in a light green, if you can see that there, denotes the limits of the I-205 toll project, which are the same limits as the I-205 improvements project. So as mentioned earlier, the agency has recently received direction from Governor Kotek, and that direction included that the agency should deliver an updated finance plan on these urban mobility strategy projects that I have just described here by July 1st of 2023, so just in the next several weeks. It's also directed the agency to provide implementation plans that show how the agency plans to mitigate diversion for toll projects as well as address equity concerns. And then finally, as was mentioned, it also directs the agency to not collect tolls until January 1 of 2026. So Commissioner Savas is correct about a 14-month delay there in toll collection. We at the agency are looking forward to working with the increased guidance and engagement with both the governor and the newly formed special subcommittee on transportation planning in our state legislature. And we look forward to being able to work together to be able to provide a toll program in 2026 that will meet the priorities of the region, and certainly looking forward to the conversations we'll be able to have with this additional time over the coming months. So next slide. The one thing the guidance we don't anticipate will affect is the construction of the Abernathy Bridge project, which is currently underway, as most of you have seen. So I'd like to just take a moment and provide an update on the Abernathy Bridge project. So next slide. So this project began just nearly a year ago, and a ton of work has been underway. If any of you have been driving along the 205 corridor, you can see the traffic control. You can see a lot of earthwork on the West Lynn side, on the south side of the interstate. You can see a lot of barges, cranes. A lot of activity has been going on as the construction has been moving forward gainfully. Here's some pictures, and in the top left, you can see some barges. Those are construction barges that are setting up underneath the bridge. In the top middle, there's a temporary work bridge that's being constructed, and a little aerial view of that. In the bottom middle, you can see a nighttime shot. A lot of nighttime shifts have gone on over the last year to build those large, wide, 12-foot wide, over 200-foot deep foundations that will support the seismically resilient Abernathy Bridge. And then on the right, we're really excited to see that just in the last couple months, we're starting to put the columns on those deep foundations that have been constructed. And so you can start to see the new bridge supports coming up out of the river, which is a huge milestone for the crew and a testament to the amount of work they've really been able to accomplish over just the past year. So next slide, please. We also have local area improvements off the 205 corridor. So again, as I mentioned, if you've seen the West Lynn side, on the south side there, we're already working on the roundabout that will be constructed that'll change the ramp access to 205 going northbound in that area. We also are constructing multimodal improvements on both sides of the river, bike and pedestrian facilities for those who are walking, biking, or rolling, so that they also have safe access and are able to get around using other modes. Next slide, please. And I'll mention the construction, as noted on the signs in the area, is expected to be completed by winter of 2025. So one of the most, considering this group here in the Oregon City Business Alliance, one of the most important parts of this project I think in one of the best accomplishments is what we've been able to do to create family wage jobs on this contract. And so this contract has over 1 million labor hours on it. It has been provided jobs for people who work for the contractor, for the subcontractors, disadvantaged business enterprises, minority-owned businesses, and emerging small businesses. And one of the groups I really want to highlight here today that I think is really important is the individuals who live in economically distressed areas. So ODOT applied for approval to use a pilot program from our partners at Federal Highways. And this pilot, I believe ODOT is the first in the nation to implement. And what this pilot allows us to do is to let the contractor focus on hiring people who live in economically distressed zip codes that are within the project area. And right now, that percentage or goal is set at about 8%, and our contractor is currently exceeding that goal. We'll see how it evens out over the entire course of the project. But just at the goal amount, we're talking about 80,000 labor hours that can go to folks who are living in economically distressed areas near the project site and go from, on a project like this, a 4-year program, go from entry level to journey level knowledge as a tradesperson and really be able to move themselves into a place of financial stability through this project. So we're really excited to be the first state in the country to be able to implement this, and we're really looking forward to show how successful it is and hopefully encourage the use of a program like this on a lot more projects, certainly at least here in Oregon. So next slide. So just want to take a minute to honor all the folks who are out there working and show a quick video. It's just a minute or two on a lot of the work that's been done out on Abernathy. It's good, and hopefully, have people here heard about Oscar the Oscillator? No? So the big blue piece of equipment there was specially made for this project in Germany. Malcolm, who's the DBE subcontractor who's drilling those deep, wide foundations that are the deepest foundation of that width anywhere in the country. They got a special piece of equipment to come out here. It's the most powerful oscillator also in the country right now. And it's been affectionately named by the construction crew as Oscar, and is a big reason why they've been able to put a lot of those deep foundations in the ground, just so many accomplished during that first in-water work season. So it's been really fun to see out there, and if you have a chance, definitely encourage you to go down to the marina or the boat ramp and take a look around and see, like, just it's one of a kind work that's going on here just off our doorstep. If you're a little bit of an engine nerd like me, it's really exciting stuff to see. All right, So without further ado, we'll get on to the I-205 toll project. And the environmental assessment document, as I mentioned, was released in February of 2021 with a 60-day public comment period that ended on April 21st. In that document, it includes tolling on all lanes of I-205 between the Abernathy Bridge and Tualatin River Bridge. The funds collected from those tolls would pay for the improvements on that 7 miles specifically. And we have currently reviewing about 2,800 comments that we received on that environmental assessment, and I'm sure comments from many of the folks here in this room. As we're reviewing those documents and those comments and summarizing them, we'll be looking again to guidance from the governor, the special subcommittee on transportation in our state legislature, our Oregon Transportation Commission, our advisory committees that are supporting us on tolling, and of course, here today, your input and feedback and conversations with community members just like this. So we'll go to the next slide. This slide shows the limits of the toll project that's covered in the environmental assessment. And again, that toll project, or the environmental assessment, describes a build and no build option. And so the build option includes both tolling all lanes between Abernathy and Tualatin River Bridge and constructing the missing third lane in each direction for 7 miles along the corridor together, and what the impacts would be by 2045 should that project go forward. And it compares that to doing nothing, essentially. So the existing corridor stays as is, there would be no tolls, there would be no third lane, and compares those two scenarios. Again, the project would pay for that missing third lane in each direction, that's 7 miles, as well as the upgrading or replacement of 9 bridges, including the Abernathy Bridge, to create that seismically resilient earthquake corridor for the region. And then we also are constructing several multimodal improvements that are associated off-system as well as ready along the 205 corridor. So next slide. So with that, we'll go ahead and just watch a quick video, also quick, about how collection of tolls occurs using a modern toll collection system.
To reduce traffic congestion and help make needed transportation improvements, ODOT is studying tolling on all lanes of I-5 and I-205 in and around Portland. We know that tolling is new to Oregon. Although many decisions still need to be made, we wanted to show you what an all-electronic tolling system could look like in this area. First, a driver sets up an account to pay for tolls. Drivers could go online, or we'll have help available. Once an account is set up, there are various payment options, including cash or connecting to a credit card for ongoing charges. With an account, drivers receive a toll tag, which is a sticker that attaches to a car's windshield. When driving on a toll road, vehicles go under a structure with equipment that reads the tag. The toll is then deducted from the connected account. There are no toll booths or buckets to throw change into, and drivers never stop or slow down. Drivers on our toll roads always keep moving. If no tag is detected, a temporary photo is taken of the license plate, and the registered driver will receive a bill in the mail. How would drivers know how much the toll is? ODOT plans to post the cost on road signs and on the internet. Toll rates will have a set schedule and vary based on time of day, with higher toll rates during morning and afternoon rush hours and lower tolls at other times of day. Tolls are set in advance and will not change unexpectedly based on traffic. Depending on your income, you may be eligible for a discount or other kinds of rebates or credits. To learn more and get involved, visit OregonTolling.org.
All right, and that video is mostly for my mom, who lives in Canby and frequently asks me whether we'd be stopping and throwing change in buckets, and a lot of her friends and community members also have that question, and so I don't think we can talk about what a modern tolling system looks like enough, especially since it's so new to all of us here in Oregon. So again, back to the toll project environmental assessment. So that document, should that proposed scenario go forward, shows a lot of benefits from tolling and building the third lane on I-205. There would be at least 50% faster travel times in the peak hour, during the peak rush hour in the evening, as well as 25% faster times in the morning rush hour. We'd also see that potential of 14 hours of congestion in 2045 be reduced to 2 hours of congestion in 2045 with the project as it's described in the environmental assessment. We'd see a significant reduction in those crashes, again, from building that third lane, as well as allowing folks to travel at less stop-and-go traffic, which would create less crash environment. And then there's an overall economic benefit as well as a specific economic benefit for our freight partners on the corridor due to reduced travel times. And then finally, there's a significant environmental benefit that we see, which is a 9% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in just the first couple years of implementation. That grows to about 12% over a longer period of time. And that's because over the first few years, again, we have less electric vehicles in 2027 than we would anticipate in 2045, but we still see an increase in meeting our state climate goals by doing this project. So next slide, please. So how do we develop an environmental assessment document? Well, this is the bureaucratic part of this conversation where I get to talk about, on behalf of our federal highways partners, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as we affectionately call it in shorthand, which is a federally mandated project, and I don't want to step out of the federal policy here, so I might read this to you. It requires agencies to incorporate an environmental analysis. It's legally required for most projects that need federal funding or require a federal decision. It addresses impacts to a variety of resources, community, environmental, and historic. In the case of the document that was prepared for 205, which was an environmental assessment, that document compares that build to no build. So again, if we built both the lane and tolled all lanes, what would the impacts be in 2045 compared to if we do nothing and leave the corridor essentially as it is now in 2045? What would those impacts be? And there are other factors that are included, and we have here our transportation and traffic engineers rely upon a traffic model that says this is what we think Portland will generally be like in 2045, and that model is owned and maintained by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or Metro. And so we use that regionally agreed upon model to predict what we think the impacts would be in 2045. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are incorporating public input into the process and decision making, much like and in many different ways and venues, and much like the conversation we're having here today. So next slide. So specifically in the environmental assessment document, we evaluated these 10 topics. Travel time that we've talked about, and not just on 205, but also on the local system, was evaluated as part of, and is included in that document. We look at the business impacts, so what sort of impacts would occur for those businesses generally impacted by possibly folks bypassing downtown areas or congestion in downtown areas. Diversion impacts, which I know are extremely, you all are extremely interested in learning more about, and the impacts to the local system here in Clackamas County, as well as what's a rate and what are the revenue estimates, which are provided in that report is an estimate of what the rates are and how much revenue could be generated is provided in what we call level 2 traffic and revenue analysis. I will caveat that by saying that although we assume some rates for modeling for this document as required by federal highways, the final rates will be set by the Oregon Transportation Commission as they are the toll authority for the state of Oregon. So these are just rates that are used for modeling. We also look, of course, at safety, impacts to low-income populations, our freight partners. We look at how much noise impacts are when you build the additional third lane. There's more traffic that's closer to houses, and so evaluating that and providing opportunities for sound walls if the community wants them, and we put that out to a vote before we build any sound walls in the area. So far, 2 have been approved, and we have 1 more sound wall vote that we would be proposing, and see how the community feels about that. And then, of course, we've discussed climate and air quality today and equity impacts, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here on the next slide. So outside of the environmental assessment document, we have an equity and mobility advisory committee that has been meeting for nearly 3 years and advising ODOT on the best ways to address the needs of low-income drivers. And one of the most tangible sets of recommendations that we have that we're focused on right now is their recommendations around low-income exemptions and discounts. And so the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee, or EMAC, made a presentation to the Oregon Transportation Commission and recommended looking for significant discounts or exemptions for drivers who are experiencing 200% or less of the federal, whose incomes are at 200% or less of the federal poverty level. They also asked us to continue to study other income levels as well to see about implementation. And then encouraged us to focus outreach and messaging to those communities who have been underserved or historically not had a chance to participate in the process, and to do that by using community-based organizations and community liaisons to help us ensure that we're getting the information out to those communities through trusted advisors. They also recommended that we look and provide for a cash-based option for folks who are bankless and wouldn't be able to use electronic payments or use a typical brick-and-mortar bank for paying for tolls, as well as provide access to a lot of our documents in different languages. And of course, folks who have little to no internet access to be able to provide mailed hard copies or hand out hard copies through those community liaisons. And then finally, once this program is implemented, to make sure that we're evaluating it periodically. I will say that the policy and approach to address equity for the Oregon toll program is on the leading edge of incorporating equity in the entire country. I believe we are the first agency to implement low-income factors on day 1 and on opening day of collecting tolls. Most other programs have implemented the toll program and then after the fact started to address the equity impacts of that toll program. So we are working really hard to establish a new national standard for how we approach setting up toll programs to make sure we're really providing access for everyone to use the system, not just those who have the means to pay for it. So next, one more note here. There's a pretty important meeting happening on July 21st. There'll be a public meeting between the EMAC and the Statewide Toll Rulemaking Advisory Committee, or the STRAC. And what that group does is sets the rate-setting policy recommendations for the Oregon Transportation Commission. So as we look at a lot of these recommendations from the EMAC, it's the STRAC who will take those recommendations and turn them into rate-setting policies for consideration by the Transportation Commission. And so the 21st will be the beginning of that sort of meat and potatoes kind of conversation around how do we take ideas like this and really put them into play, and what are the trade-offs and what are some of the opportunities as well as limitations to some of those recommendations as we're going forward. So if you have an opportunity, I'm sure it will be recorded. I encourage everyone to have a chance to watch that and provide your public comment and input. So next slide. So as I mentioned, we are currently reviewing those 2,800 comments that we received on the environmental assessment document. I'll be clear, I expect changes to where that environmental assessment document has been based on a lot of the comments that we've received, as well as the recent guidance from Governor Kotek. We'll have opportunities to engage with the special subcommittee on transportation planning in our state legislature. I believe those meetings will start after July, and provide input and feedback and engagement from that group. We'll continue to meet with our advisory committees like the EMAC and the STRAC. We also have the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, of which Commissioner Savas is a member of, and other committees that we gain input and feedback from. And of course, conversations like we'll have here today are also key to ensuring that we're getting the best input that we can to create a toll program that works for Oregonians. Just highlight again that guidance from Governor Kotek, first to deliver that updated financial plan for the urban mobility strategy by July 1st, so in just a few weeks. To also deliver an implementation plan that describes how the agency plans to mitigate diversion and address equity concerns. And then Governor Kotek has stated that tolls will not be collected until January 1 of 2026. So be working with all these groups, getting input, looking at how we can start the toll program in 2026 in a way that reflects the priorities of the region. So next slide, please. And then before I turn it over here to Commissioner Savas, I just want to say, again, we're here today to really show up differently. We're here today to put people first in any toll program that we develop. We at ODOT are grateful for the opportunity to have more time, to have more conversations about exactly how to do that and the best way to do that for folks in this community and for Oregonians. And we really want to get your input on what being heard looks like to each and every one of you. So thanks again for being here, and know that we will be taking notes. I have a team here. This meeting's being recorded. We'll be reviewing the video footage and making sure that no comments are left out. And we want to thank you again for your time and your feedback and your input here today. So with that, I'll turn it to Commissioner Savas to get his perspective and thoughts on how we can improve the Oregon toll program. So thank you again.
Want to be a slide operator?
While we're transitioning here, I want to remind folks that the green cards on your table are for questions. If you'd like to submit your questions, our president will be reviewing the question cards, and when those will be asked after the presentation. And the presentation is being recorded, and we should have it live on our YouTube channel. Not live, but it should be available on our YouTube channel probably in a week. He's nodding, so thank you for that. Where'd you go? Oh, I'm taking this.
Yep, please. Well, thank you for having me today and trying to help you get updated a little bit on the program and where Clackamas County is on this. But I do first want to say that in my 20 some odd years of public service, I've always been appreciative and treated ODOT with a lot of respect, and I still intend to do that here today. We have a lot of great people that work for ODOT, some of which are friends of mine, by the way, and neighbors, and also I also thought that ODOT has done, over the years, I think a fantastic job of delivering projects. So a lot of good people, a lot of good engineers, a lot of good staff, workers, and unfortunately, sometimes they put their life on the line on our highways when people aren't paying attention. So to all those who lost their lives or been injured seriously, it is a dangerous job for some of those out there on our roads today. So with that in mind, I thought just briefly a little bit of history on how at least we got here. I'm not going to go way back. I'll be brief. HB 2017 really began early in the year in 2017 when some local transportation leaders, myself, two other county commissioners from Multnomah County, Washington County, City of Portland, not county commissioner, but city commissioner, we were all tasked with by the state legislature to tell metro regional leaders, tell the state legislature what it is you want in a transportation package. And we came up with the 3 bottlenecks. We got regional agreement, and those 3 bottlenecks were Highway 217, the Rose Quarter, which was a big one, and still is a big one, and like the I-205 project. And why was the I-205 project important to Clackamas County? Well, it was a bottleneck, but because of the bottleneck itself, it was creating a lot of diversion, a lot of safety issues. I have stacks of accident reports, and when you look at the accident reports, you realize, and people's statements, whether they're in the hospital or they're giving their report to the police officer, they cut through either Wilsonville or Stafford Road or whatnot because the traffic was bottled up on a 205 and it's a shortcut. Or their phone app gave them a shortcut to get them from point A to point B much faster. So that was the imperative for us. We wanted to get rid of diversion. We wanted to make our streets safer. It was impacting businesses. That was our motivator. Certainly, as you heard, the seismic concerns for the bridge are always important. That's a valid concern. But that 3rd lane, really important to us because we knew that would really be a big solution for diversion. So that said, HB 2017 happens. 2 of the projects are funded. I-205 is not funded. We were pretty surprised. Unfortunately, inside the HB 2017 legislation was a task to look at tolling. And we were, at the time, our lobbyist county was told, well, that's not necessarily the means of funding 205, but it could be. Long story short, the committee was formed. I sat in that committee with a lot of other regional leaders. And we were introduced with a plan at the time which would toll just segments of I-5 or 205 in and around the Rose Quarter or in and around the 205 project, and also north of 205 in Multnomah County. So a few sections. And we came out of the end after several months, about almost a year of that, with not a split vote, but a majority vote saying, okay, this is what we'll do. And a minority report from Clackamas County that said, here's our objections, here's our concerns. But some of the ideas and alternatives that were pitched at that were quickly dismissed. We asked for documentation, said if you studied it, show us what you studied, give us the analysis. And one of those was an express lane. That was one that I have personal experience with. The 91 freeway in California, I think, was one of the first in the nation to do that. Highly successful. It built upon itself and it expanded throughout the region. Pays for itself, great program, still in place today. So why not? Well, I never got a clear answer to that. So fast forwarding, here we are today, and suddenly we discover over the recent years is that now there's 2 big projects added to the 3 projects, the Boone Bridge and the Interstate Bridge. Instead of just implementing or incrementally adding tolling or revenue collection modes, we're all in with something that's quite unique in the country, tolling all the lanes on all the interstates, never been done in the country, and worse than that, putting in congestion pricing or RMPP, which regional mobility pricing, which essentially variable prices the road to reduce congestion, to deter people. Contrary, and essentially, which will create diversion in of itself. That's the primary problem we have with the environmental analysis in this approach. So they added those projects. We're really not sure what the goal is. We're not really sure what the revenue collections are really going to do. We were told that what was called VMT, vehicle miles traveled, would be the funding future to replace gasoline. I want to talk about that for a minute. Been a big advocate of that. As the transportation liaison for Clackamas County, I serve in the National Association of Counties Transportation Committee as one of the vice chairs. We pushed this when Congressman DeFazio was the chair of that committee. He was very interested in it. We anticipated 2027, 2028, where that would be implemented to not augment gas tax, but to replace it. It'd be one for one. And ODOT had started with, years back, a program called Orgo, which is still in play today. And the recent presentation I saw here a couple of weeks ago from ODOT was that that break-even point for, let's say, an electric car, how much would it cost per mile to fairly price a mile for an electric car to go down the road for the wear and tear and put them back, make the ODOT whole. And that's 1.9 cents per mile. That was what was stated at the presentation from ODOT. And whereas the tolling program we're seeing right now for this section is about $2 per gantry, that section with 2 gantries, approximately 3 or 4 miles, is about $1, over $1 a mile. So that needs to be reconciled here pretty soon to understand what that is and what that buys. But we really don't know what that's really truly going to buy, because we still to this day, even though there's an environmental analysis out there, we still don't know what the collections are really going to be, what the projects really are going to be funded, because there's these principles. Will the funding be for a corridor? Will it be for a project? How wide is the corridor? How wide is it not? But getting back to the key thing that's most important for Clackamas County is the EA did not break down the benefit of just the lane improvements and then comparing that to adding tolling afterwards. You saw on the slide that Della put up there, the tolling project and the construction project. The analysis should have looked at what would diversion look like if they just added the lanes as originally conceived, as originally proposed. That's what we were hoping for, but it does add insult to injury to add and not ignore that, not give us the analysis of that, and simply keep our diversion at the same level, and by their E analysis actually make it worse. So our concern is that while they're correct, it does reduce diversion or congestion on their facility. So we're going to talk about on facility and off facility for a moment. So on facility, meaning 205, yeah, it probably will reduce greenhouse gases on their facility. It probably will reduce congestion on their facility. It probably will reduce delays on the freeway. But what does it do? It shifts it to the burden to the local agencies. It shifts it to downtown Oregon City, downtown Willamette, downtown 43 in West Linn. Those are the real problems that have not been addressed or not addressed in the EA. And if you look, we hired a team of experts to look at the EA, look at the analysis, look at the appendices, really complicated stuff way above my pay grade. But we have found, and we submitted a response to the EA that says we have great concerns. It appears that you're not going to meet your climate goals on and off facility. You're not going to meet the congestion goals on and off facility combined. But individually, it's not really fair for ODOT to shift that burden, wear and tear, diversion, safety, climate, to the local facilities and not compensate us for it, or not even fix it, frankly, because safety, you can't replace a life. It's going to make our roads more dangerous. There's another big issue is the safety, getting back to the accident reports. So where are we? Well, Clackamas County's basically submitted their EA response. We're not happy. We made our claims very clear. We've been sending letters. We were very excited here recently while the legislature was in session. House Bill 3614 was making got a lot of momentum, and basically what that was a bill to pause the tolling, form a local committee, form a subcommittee of the Transportation Committee, and work together with local voices to come up with solutions. And that was gaining signatures every day, sponsors every day in the state legislature. And then suddenly the halt came on when the governor, which you can look at as a good thing, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, the governor said pause, so we're in a pause. But it's pause on the tolling collections, it's not pause on the tolling program. ODOT's made it very clear in all their messaging to the OTC, to everywhere they go, that they are still going full steam ahead on developing the toll program, including the construction of the gantries and everything else, if you listen to all of the presentations ODOT's made to the OTC. So who's the OTC? The Oregon Transportation Committee. As Della properly said, they are the tolling authority. They will set the rates. But the question that comes up quite often is that, and I'm realizing I didn't not even use my PowerPoint here. The question that comes up often here is who makes these decisions? I mean, who is making the transportation decisions? When you talk to the OTC or the chair of the OTC, say, well, the legislature told us to do this. And then when you talk to others, you talk to ODOT, and I think some ODOT staff have been put in untenable positions, granted, trying to deal with the public and not really unclear on where the decisions are being made. The legislators say, well, we made this decision, or it's the Transportation Committee that did that, talked to the Transportation. And then, so we were hoping that we'd have a hearing. We all thought this year that whether it was Senator Meek's bill or it was the Anessa Hartman 3614 bill, that we would have an opportunity for a hearing. So the legislators would hear from us directly about our local concerns. We heard from one of the co-chairs of the Transportation Committee here just prior to the pause, there will be no hearings. Well, that's public process. We count on that. We were, the local mayors sent letters. We were working with the local mayors. The local mayors went, I too went and talked to our legislators, and they said, well, huh? We don't know. We don't know about your concerns. We're unaware of that. So we realized that there's a communication breakdown. And as one of the mayors said from Washington County, Mayor Bubenik from Tualatin, said yesterday morning at the RTAC Committee, the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee, we talked to the legislators. They seem to be oblivious to our concerns, right? Or clueless. I think the word was clueless. So that is, again, why we were hoping to have a voice and be able to express it directly at the hearings, which are part of our procedure, part of our legislative process. We've been denied that. Essentially, the pause, not saying it was deliberate, but the pause resulted in no opportunity to have any kind of hearings to hear these bills, to communicate or resolve that breakdown. So going back to the slide, next slide, please. Oh, it's on me. He gave it back. So Bill was. You're up. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So let's just talk about 129. The old, now, of course, we need to pay for infrastructure. We know that. 129 tolling is a typical tolling we've all been accustomed to, whether you in different parts of the country or here. My parents, our grandparents, probably somewhere, we all paid a toll somewhere. And basically what that essentially is that if you add capacity, you pay for that new capacity. Meaning if you're going to add, if you have a two-lane bridge, you add to a three-lane bridge, you toll the one lane you're adding, and you pay for that. When that is completely funded, the bond's defeased, paid off, the toll goes away. That is the typical 129 process. User pay, I support that. A lot of us support that. We expect that. We want to see our dollars at work. Next slide. Tolling required. So there's a carve out. There's a new piece of Section 129, a federal Section 129 that allows a variable pricing type program, which means that they can actually toll all the lanes, which ODOT made an application for, and they got the okay from the FHWA to do this unique thing where they can toll the existing lanes. Well, we're not happy about that. Are we essentially paying for the roads we already paid for? Yes. What do we get for it? Well, we're not really certain what we're really going to get for it, other than it's going to generate revenue. But you would think that if you're going to do this, you would pay for the facility and then once it's paid off, it'd go away. But there's more. This goes on in perpetuity, according to ODOT. ODOT said this is not going to go away. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the projects before. We had the 3 bottlenecks. They added 2 more. I don't know how many more they're going to add, but we don't even have them finished. Rose Quarter hasn't even started. The lanes they're talking about, the Abernathy, the I-205 project, the construction project, is divided into 2 phases. Phase 1A is build the bridge and the necessary on-ramps, off-ramps. But they carved it out, so now what's in jeopardy right now is the actual completion of the lanes all the way for the full 7-mile stretch. So we don't know if that's going to happen. So I won't say we're being held hostage, but the longer we wait, and I think some legislators made this key point to us when we were in Salem, the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. The resources are there. They need to, I think, press forward. We've delayed this too long. 2017, it's 5 years have gone by. The Rose Quarter's gone up in cost. Every project's going up in cost. we can't afford to wait for projects when we have the resources to build them. I think they need to do that. Instead, we're shifting a lot of those resources to a tolling program, to a lot of other things, but that's more budgetary. There's a huge cost, standing up this mobility project. They need to put up gantries along all the corridors. They need to stand up the office staff, the back offices, all that staffing, and they're going to stand up, as you heard, this equity office, which essentially is going to either give people a lower rate, low-income folks a lower rate or a free rate, and of course that's going to equate to probably higher rates for others. Is that fair? I think I think there are people that are going to be devastated by this economically, but I think it's probably going to be more than we realize, right? We all know that inflation's hurting families at all levels. Next slide. You heard Della, basically talk about the 205 project. Next slide. Our concerns of the county, increased diversion. We're not solving the problem we set out to solve. Not by our choice, but by instituting a tolling program, which is going to create diversion. Number two, decreased safety. Again, that was a big issue for us, still is a big issue, not for just the county, but our constituents, the unincorporated area, and also the cities. Impact to business activity and residential access, that's a big one. Has there been analysis on that? No. We're asking for an EIS, a full economic impact statement to be done for a deeper analysis. As a business owner in Clackamas County for 25 years, I can tell you that diversion, congestion, and stalls, and all those things that create havoc in your business community where cars can't move, or people don't want to go to your business because it's going to take them an extra hour or two, that's a negative. And my concern is for the local businesses, the mom and pops. I consider myself a mom and pop in my day. That's going to be devastating, especially in key areas, whether it's Main Street, Oregon City, you're anywhere near the bridge, the Arch Bridge, Westland. Those are going to be impacts that we're all going to suffer with. Check my time here. What are we doing? So I'm right about 12:30, so I've got about half an hour left. Just going to look here at what other points I wanted to make. I think that pretty well gets to my what I really wanted to kind of put out there, the big stuff. I could talk about this for a couple hours or more, but I think the questions are more important and might reveal some answers. So I will just stop here and let Ken.
No, you can stay up there, Paul. You can stay up there. No, I'm going to stand between you and Della so that you guys don't start hitting each other or anything like that. We obviously have a lot of engagement from our attendees today. I've never had so many question cards filled out at this point in a presentation. So I appreciate everybody listening to all the information that has been shared. Obviously, we can probably figure all this out in just one meeting, don't you think? It doesn't seem like it's too insurmountable.
That works for me.
Solve the I-205 tolling program.
There you go. Piece of cake. So, well, let me ask you this. What is the status of the Rose Quarter project right now?
I believe that one's for me. So the Rose Quarter project is going through a supplemental environmental analysis. So are we feedbacking each other maybe?
I was told to be able to stand somewhere where they can get it in the camera.
Is this working? Okay, great. So the I-5 Rose Quarter project is going through a supplemental environmental assessment process to reflect what was Governor's negotiation, Governor Kate Brown's negotiation that resulted in what we call Hybrid 3. So there were some changes to the original environmental document that was completed, I believe, in late 2020. And so the technical work for the supplemental environmental assessment to reflect those changes is ongoing, and we're hoping for that federal decision by the end of this year, and then looking forward beyond that towards starting construction, possibly as early as 2024.
Okay, and I appreciate that. It just seems like there are more headlines about division up in that part of the Portland area where the Rose Quarter widening is proposed to go. And I know you can't answer this question, but if it comes to the point where they just can't agree on the impacts from the environmental assessment and evaluation, is it possible just to take those funds from the Rose Quarter and give it to I-205 now, and then go ahead and get the funds later for Rose Quarter? Put the tolling there first.
I think that question's been asked several times. It's above my pay grade to answer where the transfer of money. I look to our commission and the legislature and other folks for that guidance. But I will say, although it may seem in the papers that there's a lot of division, I will say that in recent months there's actually been a lot of collaboration and coming together. So we've made some good progress with the Historic Albina Advisory Board community there, Albina Vision Trust and the City of Portland, as well as Rip City Management and the Blazers. We've been meeting with them intensely over the past 4 months or so, and are starting to come to a coalition on ways to move forward. So I believe we have more momentum behind the Rose Quarter project at this time than we've had in previous times, and so we are optimistic about coming together on an agreed upon alternative for that project.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's dig in here, shall we? Congestion tolling charges higher fees during peak traffic periods. Many people who live on a limited income rely on vehicles to travel to service-oriented places which do not have the flexibility to travel during non-peak times to meet their needs. Is there a consideration of providing a non-tolled lane of the freeway similar to other states to provide a free option for those who choose to extend their travel time instead of paying a toll? I know you both have kind of touched on that, but.
Yeah, well, like I said, we had pitched the idea of the express lane model. I think it needs to be really seriously considered. It was mentioned yesterday by others in the region, and I think we need to take a hard look at it. If ODOT really is going to listen and change their approach, I hope they really seriously consider, and if they have a reason to say it won't work, then show us the numbers, show us the data that says just that. The other idea we pitched was a frontage road as an alternative. Washington State has a lot of frontage roads. Part of the 217 bottleneck incorporates a frontage road, an alternate for local traffic so local people are not stuck with paying a toll simply to go from one part of their town to another part of their town.
Do you want to comment on that, Della?
Sure. I mean, I'll just clarify that the direction to toll lanes, I believe Director Strickler clarified yesterday at the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, is provided in House Bill 3055. And so we've had legislative direction on that, and of course, we at ODOT follow that direction. And I think as far as accommodating folks on limited incomes, that is what the aim of the low-income toll program is for, is not just to provide a free lane that might be highly congested, but to be able to reduce the impact so those travelers can also get the benefit of a faster travel time along with the rest of the community. So that's our policy and approach now, and we're certainly interested in your feedback and thoughts on that.
Okay. The portion of I-205 that you're looking to toll is between the Tualatin River Bridge and the George Abernathy Bridge. That is actually used in a lot of ways just as a local street for people that live in the neighboring communities of Westland, Oregon City, Tualatin, Wilsonville, because there's no other way to get across the river. That's it. Why not, since these are interstate freeways, why not just toll the long-haul carriers at the borders? When they enter Oregon from Washington or California, they're the ones that are using the majority of our roads. Why not charge the toll there?
I would support that. One idea I've been floating is, what if they actually set up a tolling gantry type setup for the region and gave people who sign up for the ORGO, the road user charge fee, which again should make ODOT whole, and if they are a member and signed up and participate in the road user charge program, they won't pay a toll, and the out-of-state people would pay a toll to make it more equitable. That's another proposal I want to get out there as well.
At the hearings?
If we ever get a chance for a hearing, yes.
Okay, Della, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think when we look at the traffic modeling that's provided in the EA, we have found that there is a very small percentage of folks who are going back and forth compared to the higher population. I think we also know that the folks that are, as we're trying to manage congestion, we would have to look at what the model would show as far as actually reducing congestion if it was just out-of-state travelers. So that's a question we can take back and consider with our team. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. Paul?
Just want to add one thing. So the Oregon Truckers Association has shared with me that they have found that a majority of their users, the Oregon Truckers Association, use I-5, and they really want to see the Rose Quarter, and I do too. I just want to let you know, it may be in Multnomah County, but affects us all. I really think that's a really important project we need to get done. It should be well underway by now, but it's not. But the other thing that was shared was that I-205 is a lot of what's called over-the-road truckers that are out of state, just using Oregon as a corridor, a throughput from Seattle or Washington State or California. So that's a big issue. So they kind of identify that user of trucks, that there's two types of users: local trucks, even though they're large, and the over-the-road long-haul truckers.
Okay, great. So we've heard a range of fees that will be charged based upon congestion pricing, whether it's peak or non-peak hours. How would a low-income person qualify, or has it been thought about, how do you show proof that you're eligible for a discount?
So one of the aspects of selecting the metric of 200% of the federal poverty level or below is that a lot of other programs use that. So I've heard, and again, the statewide toll rulemaking advisory committee will be creating these specific policies, but we understand that folks who are on food benefits like SNAP, who are getting discounts through TriMet and other programs, use that same system. So if someone's on SNAP, we would contemplate that it would be possible for us to access that database and confirm that income level using existing programs, which reduces our administrative cost of implementing the low-income toll program. So that's one of the benefits of using that metric.
How about if you're just a retired couple and you're not on SNAP, but you do get Social Security?
Those policies, that's one of the questions that's still out there and in the coming months that we'll be looking to address, but is certainly being contemplated by that STRAC or Statewide Toll Rulemaking Advisory Committee. So it's a good one.
Okay, great. Now, I didn't hear anything in the presentations today about once the added lanes are completed and paid for, that the tolls will be sunsetted. Is it the intention of ODOT to continue to leave the tolls in place forever in order to go ahead and, again, change people's driving habits?
I'll make sure Commissioner Savas gets some airtime up here too. But on this one specifically, the way that the bonding to pay for the improvements using toll revenue on the 205 corridor works is expected to take around 25 to 35 years to pay off. So those tolls will be collected beyond a lot of our time engaging in this conversation, and so we would put it to the future Oregon Transportation Commission and the community members at that time to decide what the best next steps would be for the toll program decades from now.
Yeah, well, we have been told by ODOT that it will go on in perpetuity. We've heard that from high-level ODOT staff, and I know Della's heard that as well. Of course, we have a state legislature who make the laws. Maybe that does change. But one thing I want to get back to the last question a little bit is that whether it's the low-income program or whether it's the tolling program, we've asked a question: what is the admin cost for that? I mean, what do you, for every dollar of money collected for these toll program, how much that's actually going to go towards either bond defeasance or towards road maintenance or whatever all these claims are? And we have heard ranges from 5% to 60%. Probably most of them we've heard from ODOT are probably closer to the 40 to 50+% range. The most affordable means are the lowest cost admin for collections for road fees is gas tax, because really the vendors really provide that and really essentially mail the check in or mail the funds to ODOT. So it's the lowest cost. I talked about the 1.9 cents for the road user fee. I think probably the reason that that might be so low is because it's a lower cost to administer. But folks, affordability is a huge issue for everyone. And if 50 cents or more every dollar collected is not going to go to the road or go to the project or go to capacity, that's a big concern here. I mean, we haven't seen the financials about that, and that's something that we're really frustrated about actually seeing. What's going to be effective, not just effective for every dollar being used, but as far as reaching our goals, whether the goals seem to change, whether it's climate goals or whether it's congestion goals or whether it's building capacity. And last thing on this capacity issue, I think that's really frustrating. A lot of us know that have been around for a long time that there's an ideology by some that we don't need to add any lanes. We need to be on a road diet. We are suffering from an undersized system today because we have not built the capacity necessary. Nowhere in the country do they congestion price an area so small, such an undersized system, and offer no transit and no alternatives. And we were told early on by ODOT staff for over a year that this tolling would fund transit. And they were told afterwards that he retracted that. We can't do that.
Would you like to add anything else?
I could keep on going. Give me a couple hours.
All right. Well, one of the aspects of congestion pricing is to go ahead and get people out of their cars. Reduce the number of cars that are on the freeway, number of cars that are utilizing local roads. Has ODOT and TriMet and Metro also been having discussions about increasing public transit in the impacted areas?
Yes. So we have set the table at ODOT for a lot of the transit providers, specifically along the 205 corridor. So that includes the community college transit providers here, SMART, which is the Wilsonville area transit providers, TriMet, and other groups that come together and develop a transit strategy to complement the toll program. So we've presented at the Regional Toll Advisory Committee a couple times on the initial framework of that group and what some of the overall strategy would be for that project or for that work, and especially how it relates to complement a toll program on I-205, which doesn't have much or any transit capacity or lines currently. And so that work is now getting into the proposal stages or the project stages. They have the criteria and screening criteria. I know this sounds very bureaucratic, and we all can just say, hey, you just need a line over here. But through this process, they've set screening criteria, so now the transit agencies who are the experts, ODOT is not a transit expert, however, we're very interested in partnering and creating that table for those ideas and thoughts. And as they propose those projects, we will then be bringing those to the Regional Toll Advisory Committee as well for input and thoughts and feedback on how we can best provide a transit line along that parallels the 205 corridor and the tolling program. So that is in the works, and with the extra time, we may be able to implement that on day one, so we're optimistic about that effort going forward.
Yes, as I mentioned, we were told that tolling would fund this transit along this corridor and build a system, because there's nothing there really. We learned later there's a constitutional restriction that would not allow that. That needs to be resolved. And we're also told that if indeed it funds transit, that the tolls will get to be higher than they even are being tested and projected for today. I guess unknown. We just don't know. We're hungry for the data. We just don't have the data.
So the environmental assessment report was for a 60-day comment period, and you got 2,800 responses, which is obviously very good. Out of those 2,800 responses, was there a general theme that kept popping up over and over and over again?
I can say because there are 2,800 responses, we're still not in the place of setting up the themes. I'm looking at staff here saying no, they don't know yet. So they're still compiling, tagging, and categorizing that data and want to make sure that they do it correctly. So we'll have more information in a couple months, but at this time I couldn't really comment on the major themes. Other than I will say that the sentiment of the comments from previous comment periods has increased to a much more negative tone than I think in previous comment periods that we've had. And so we want to note that we hear that shift in how people are feeling about the toll program, and again, appreciate the delay in collection to allow us more time to really dig through that and see that we can pivot and adjust as we're working to move forward. So it's been, that's probably the biggest theme I can share today.
Paul, you want to add?
Well, we've all seen the polling, and I've been in rooms where there have been over 300 people and testifying, not at the legislature, unfortunately, but in local forums. And the last one I attended, actually the last two that I attended, no one was supportive of tolling out of all the speakers who spoke. So it's pretty resounding that there's not a lot of support for tolling.
And I don't know who's in charge of this because there's a lot of committees and subcommittees, OTC, ODOT. Would they consider reopening the environmental assessment comment period? 60 days didn't seem like a very long period of time.
So ODOT prepares the environmental assessment on behalf of Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highway Administration's typical comment period for an environmental assessment is 30 days. We worked with them based on knowing, our community and the time that folks would need to review the comment period to start it at 45. We heard more feedback to extend. We were able to extend that for 60 days. I believe it may be one of the longest comment periods Federal Highways has entertained for an environmental assessment document. And for comparison, I think the Cordon study for value pricing in New York City, which is one of the more sophisticated toll programs that's being considered, I believe it was either 60 days or 45 days for that, I think, a document that was much longer than our document. Understandably, however, it takes me a while to read something that's 100 pages just as a human being, and it takes the rest of us a long time to read a lot of those significant documents. And so we understand that having 60 days to read something that's this important and this impactful is challenging. And although the comment period from Federal Highway's perspective has closed on the environmental assessment document, our engagement and input continues in and outside of the environmental assessment venue. So we, again, have the Regional Toll Advisory Committee, we have the EMAC, we have the STRAC, we'll have the special subcommittee and on transportation planning. So there are many, many other ways to provide comment, and there have been many ways before those 60 days to provide comment over the last couple of years. And we at ODOT are here to keep that comment period open and incorporate that feedback above and beyond the federally mandated process. We're here to get this right, and that's going to take more than 60 days, and we understand that.
Paul?
Well, we have a number of challenges about the EA, but two I want to point out is that incorporated in their plan is what's called pre-construction tolling. And what that would do really is before the lanes are built, before all those added capacity things which would help reduce diversion in and of itself, they want to toll on top of it. So we expect a far greater increase of tolling or diversion as a result of that pre-construction tolling. That's going to be a disaster for our local cities, Oregon City and West Linn especially. The other aspect that we challenge with the EA is the fact that they didn't study. There's two tolling programs, folks. There's the tolling program for the bridge, this 129 modified with VPPP, Variable Pricing Project, but also the RMPP, the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. That's going to add an added cost. That was not evaluated in the EA. So why not wait and do it all together or do an EIS? Again, more information that's extremely critical to getting to the bottom line of what it's really going to do. And how do you measure impacts when you test for a lower dollar rate of the toll when you know it's going to be higher with the RMPP? So there's a lot of errors. There's a lot of flaws in the EA.
And kind of following up on that, I drive Highway 43 a lot. And right now, if you try to get across the bridge, the George Abernathy or the Arch Bridge, anytime from 3 to 6 in the afternoon, you've already got tremendous gridlock. It's bad. At the end of the Arch Bridge, which a lot of the diversion will take place on, there's a stoplight that backs the traffic all the way up onto the West Lynn side of the bridge. If you now add more vehicles into that, I don't see how any of these intersections could pass ODOT's requirements.
Yeah, I think right now we're all seeing congested areas because there haven't been improvements to the transportation system. There haven't been improvements to I-205 local systems, and again, because of the funding constraints that we have based on the tools that we have today. I think, and Commissioner Savas can back me up here, yesterday our Director Strickler, talked about what are the sorts of improvements that are really needed to be made in communities to be able to thrive amidst a toll program being implemented on the interstate systems through those areas. And so what sort of transportation solutions is Clackamas County considering, is Oregon City, is West Lynn considering in their transportation system plans to improve those local systems so that folks who are traveling are going to be blind to whether or not they're on an ODOT facility or a county facility or a city facility. They're just going to know they can't get somewhere and that they're stuck in traffic. And so how do we work together collaboratively? And again, Director Strickler put that on the line yesterday. Tell us what you're interested in your transportation system plans that could help improve the local systems as well as the interstate system as we're looking to create an area where we can get around independent of what facility that we're using. So I think that's one of the pieces and ways we're pausing and pivoting to be able to get this right.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, this is probably going to go back to that on-facility, off-facility discussion. It is apparent to our local partners, the cities and their staff, a number of us in the county, that ODOT's just focus on their facility. They measure only what's on their facility. They don't care, don't seem to care, don't appear to care about our facility. That diversion is wear and tear on our roads. Are we going to get compensated? The answer is, well, we asked for revenue sharing, no. Do you have the money for mitigation? Again, we don't have the data, we haven't seen the money, we don't know. I would hazard a guess that between the cost of implementing a low-income toll program, the cost of implementing the toll program, the cost of implementing the RMPP program, the cost of the mitigation would exceed the mathematical benefit of paying for the project itself.
Okay, we're not doing tolling. Meeting over. So, and that leads me to another question. Recently, Congress approved funding for major infrastructure projects across the country, and obviously they're targeting ones that are shovel-ready. Was the I-205 road widening included as a possible project to receive federal funding from that program?
So our ODOT provided an application called an infra grant application to federal highways. We've submitted it twice, I think, to the in and around $100 to $160 million. That program is generally limited by less than that amount. And so we are looking for federal funds to help pay for the 205 project. And as far as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, that was passed, a lot of those funds were selected by the Oregon Transportation Commission to go to a lot of other bridge needs across the state, and I do not believe that funds were directed to the 205 project from that package. However, we are looking at many other federal programs, including the mega project program on top of the infra grant program, and we're optimistic about our chances. On the next submittal, we got some really good feedback from USDOT on our last submittal, and so we are actively working to obtain additional federal funds for the project, for the program.
You know, Clackamas County and local jurisdictions can apply for these federal grants, but ODOT can, and I think probably is very competitive across the country. But at the same token is when they apply for a program of tolling, you're almost signaling to the federal government that they have the means to pay for it. It's tolling, so that might possibly affect their decisions. I can't say that for sure. I have no idea, but I just wonder that's why we failed. ODOT's failed multiple times, and that's not a criticism. but not everyone wins. There's more projects out there that people apply for than there is money, so that goes for everyone. But the concern we have is that they got, I believe, I hear $1 billion of Build America dollars that are in the coffers of ODOT. They've got the resources. They haven't been really talked about where they're going to be spent. And we're talking about delaying projects if we don't have the money. And we're losing ground on inflation. We need to build these projects now. Every project's going up on a daily basis. Why, when you got the money in the bank, why aren't you not spending it? I'm going to ask that.
At the hearings.
At the hearings.
At the hearings. Okay. Has ODOT considered financing the project through means other than tolling? Specifically, large tech employers such as Intel, Amazon, and Twitter have received huge property tax abatements for relocating or expanding. Reversing this trend could provide the financial resources to address improvements to our regional transportation system in a much more equitable manner. Has this been considered? If not, why not? And what type of, as we transition from gas combustion engines to more hybrids and EVs, you touched on this earlier, what type of collection program for revenue generation can be implemented to tax people with EVs that aren't paying the gas tax?
So in HB 2017, they did increase the vehicle registration fee for electric vehicles to kind of help balance that out a little bit. That road user charge, vehicle miles traveled, VMT that I talked about, that program is a kind of an equalizer, to that end. But you mentioned some large corporations, Ken, and I think about that because let's ask ourselves a big question. What county are they in? Are they being tolled? No, they're not. Why not? Highway 26 carries more cars than, probably next to or near I-5. 217, not so much, probably more like 205, but why aren't those being included? How about I-84? Why is that not being included? If there's a bottom line issue with tolling and the express lane model is not viable, was it tested by putting the express lane on all those freeways, highways, interstates? I think that model needs to be studied.
Della, any feedback? We're getting close to wrapping up here, so I want to give you a chance. Okay, so last question, in 10 seconds or less, what would you like to see happen next?
HB 3614 set up a committee. It did happen, so the bill's dead, but it set up a committee where local voices could be working with this new subcommittee to talk about solutions. I want to see us have that opportunity to talk about solutions in absence of a hearing.
Okay. But we are going to have those hearings.
We are now.
Della?
For us and the team I work with, we come to work every day to serve Oregonians to, make our quality of life better. I think for us, we want to get the right input and feedback at the right time so we're implementing something that really serves generations to come and also helps relieve our congestion issues that we're all experiencing every day. So we are here to improve the lives of Oregonians, and we really just request your continued engagement and input and feedback. We are Oregonians too, and want to get this right. We live here with our families and our parents and kids and friends, and so your input is important, and we want to thank you for continuing to stay with us in this really difficult conversation and at this time. So that's really my 10 seconds on what we're hoping to see over the next several months. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. How about a hand for our speakers today? Obviously, we haven't read the last chapter in this book by any means, but it will be interesting to find out what the governor's direction is during this pause. What specifically is she looking to see come out of these advisory committees? I know the assessment evaluation reports for the diversion impacts will be very, very important, especially to the Clackamas County area. Okay, well, thank you. So, a lot of good information there. Tolling, it's big, it's big. There probably are a lot of different ways to approach the implementation of tolling or alternative funding measures. But I think what has been said is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And how it's actually structured still remains to be seen. So continue to be engaged. There'll be a lot of press releases, articles, meetings, conversations on the impacts of tolling. So I recommend you be a part of those conversations because it will affect not only you, but your families and the local businesses in our community. So I was also told that this week is Public Works Week. So I would like to salute all the people that are here today that are in the public works industry. And I want to give a special hand to the Abernathy staff. That was a delicious buffet lunch. And there's still some root beer float desserts over there if you're interested. I had 3, but there's still a few. They're really, really good. But you gotta eat them fast because they do melt. So next month we were going to do a legislative update, but one party is not really going to the legislature much. So we really don't think that that's probably appropriate. So we're going to go ahead and have you meet as many of our newly elected state and county and local representatives. So you can kind of get a better feel for what direction they want to take our community and our local region in. So we look forward to seeing you in June. Enjoy the rest of your day. Grab a root beer float, and thank you for coming.